teams, sending multiple players to this year's All-Star game. But they've also spent more than a third of the season outside the top half of the East playoff bracket. Ask the Celtics themselves, and they'll tell you they believe they're much better than their current record suggests. Although for a while against the Wizards last night, we were quite frankly getting evidence on both sides. At times, Boston looked extremely sharp. Check this Kemba 3 to give the Celtics an 11-point lead in the third quarter. Walker would finish this game with 21 points, looking a whole lot like his old before-the-knee problems self. And Daniel Tice also had a great game, 20 points, 9 rebounds. It's performances like that from the team's role players that Boston is going to need to go anywhere this season. And it was particularly timely last night with Jaylen Brown out with a knee injury. But for Boston to go anywhere this season, the Celtics will also need to clean up the careless stretches like the one that let the Wizards come storming back last night. In fact, Washington led by 8 with under 3 minutes to go, thanks to yet another blistering performance from Bradley Beal, who would finish with 46. Yet instead of folding, Boston stood its ground. Jason Tatum, in particular, was just a monster. Check the turnaround fadeaway 3. Pretty good. Then some repeated old-fashioned head-down drives to the basket, and check what happens around the 15-second mark. Tatum crashes to the floor, which means the court gets some sweat on it, sweat that Beal then slips on a few seconds later, which lands him with his feet out of bounds. And how did Bradley feel about this?
Like some of the goofiest shit I ever seen in my life. Slipped out of bounds. Gave Tatum 3 layups at the end of the game. I'm pissed off.
Yeah, he said 3 layups for Tatum, and here's the third. Fantastic reverse there. That put Boston up by 1. And while the Wizards then had the ball and nearly 5 on the clock, watch the Celtics sideline here. The coaching staff recognizes Washington's set here. It's the same one that helped the Wizards beat Denver recently, and they start yelling instructions, telling players Beal is going to curl to the corner and that no one should switch. The heads up allowed Boston to trap Beal in that corner. Brad couldn't get a shot off, and boom, Celtics win. Got a shot off, couldn't get a good shot off.
Hit it too.
Afterward, Brad Stevens praised Tatum's, quote, will to win, saying it's been a tough month for him, but that this team has kept its connectedness and its belief. The Boston Celtics see themselves as one of the NBA's better teams. And while the jury may be still out for the rest of us, last night was certainly another step toward at least making their case. So, Richard, where are you on that? Do you believe in this Boston Celtics team this year?
I do believe in them. Like, do I think that, they need to improve a ton if they're going to make a similar run that they made last year? I do. They have 2 young stars that are growing together, that are learning how to be leaders. And you saw Jason Tatum took over after being up, being down, not having a great month, all the reasons to kind of, go a different direction, and he took over. And so just based off of that, you got to believe in him.
I believe, and Richard will tell you, the season doesn't start till after the All-Star break.
Right.
And if you think about it, their core of Marcus Smart, Kemba, Tatum, and Brown have only played 2 games together this year, so they still haven't got that chemistry and that timing down that they need, and they will get post All-Star break. And they're still right in the thick of things. I think it's 17-17. There's 3 teams, Toronto and Miami are kind of all in the thick of things, and I see all of them, trending up after All-Star break. But I'm definitely believing in the Celtics and looking forward to their rise second half of the season.
Well, look, they're playing in the East, whereas we keep noting only a handful of teams, even over 500. Oh, boy, we'll get to that a little bit more later in the show. But look, I think that if you get what you get last night, if you get Kemba looking like Kemba Walker, if you get role players playing to their ability, if you get Jaylen Brown back, this is a team that could do something. The thing is, though, they are going to be hard capped this year. So I'm interested to see what they do at the trade deadline. Do they use that trade exception they got out of the Gordon Hayward deal? Do they wait to do it this summer so they give them more flexibility this summer? I can't tell yet whether Danny Ainge feels this team really can make a run. So how much is he going to invest in them? And then, of course, we're getting ready for Marcus Smart to come back, too.
I think one thing, too, is I think we're underestimating Marcus Smart's importance, and it doesn't always show up in the numbers. But Tatum's numbers and Brown's numbers offensively are down with Marcus Smart out, because he does kind of the Clay factor, where Clay would always take the top scoring guard and kind of help save Steph a little bit. Marcus Smart does that for both those wings. Both those guys play defensive, but that's Marcus's job. And I think his leadership and the little things that don't show up on the stat sheets are really overlooked with his absence right now.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. Marcus Smart, and you see that. We've seen it with COVID. We've seen it with injuries. We've seen so much. So this year, it's tough to really judge almost any coach, right? Like Utah, who is rolling through the league, they've only had 3 different starting lineups. They've had no COVID and no injuries, and they're a very good team. So that's why. And so other teams that have dealt with it, even if they're a very good team, you could see a big drop.
You said coach. You mean the blowback on Brad Stevens right now in Boston because it's loud and windy at the moment. Marcus Smart, also a lot of playmaking for the Celtics, too, that they're missing there as well. All right. Let's go to the other side of that game because it's time for another edition of our favorite news show. I love this. Go ahead.
This is the true story.
True story.
Of 17 strangers.
Picked to play on a team.
We're all adults.
Work together.
I can't do you guys' job. You guys can't do my job.
And have their lives taped.
It's frustrating.
Find out what happens
when people stop being polite.
And start getting Beal.
I know, dog.
The Beal world.
DC.
First of all, I hear that G-Wiz is a terrible, terrible roommate. I'm just going to put that out there. Before Sunday's last-second loss to the Celtics, the Wizards had won 7 of their last 8, and they're only 2 games back of earning a spot in the play-in game. So, Matt, should Wizards fans see the glass as half empty or half full right now?
Definitely half full after the way the season started. And I think, too, and kind of our job is, what have you done for me lately? They got off to a terrible start, but we're forgetting Russell Westbrook they had to get used to Russ. Russ is a star, a future Hall of Famer, but his style of play is something you have to get used to, and he had to get used to Bradley Beal. So I think, they're off to, they're playing a lot better. I would believe half full. It's not like we're saying this team is going to make a championship run, but they're definitely capable of making the playoffs in the East.
Yeah, I agree. I think if you look at how a team is played, to Matt's point, look at how they're trending, and they're trending in a positive direction. That being said, 11 straight games of scoring 40.
And
so
that's got to be. That's got to be.
Let's actually say the stat for the people. So Bradley Beal has the last 11 games where he has tipped over 40. The Wizards have lost, which is not shockingly an NBA record.
It's not an NBA record?
I mean, I'm sorry, that is the.
I'm about to say, I was like, who scored more than that and didn't win a game?
It's Monday, and I need more coffee.
It's okay, but that to me, there might be something in that stat. Like, there might be something in that stat. Now, I'm not going to, get on Bradley Beal or say this, but 11 times? I'm sorry, if I'm doing something 11 times and it's not working, I might change.
What else do you want him to do?
I'm just saying, I might change my approach.
Well, there's an interesting stat. I did my show this morning, and we were digging a little bit. When Donovan Mitchell shoots just under 20% or 20 attempts a game, they're 15-1. When he shoots 22 attempts per game, just that's 2.5 shot attempts per game.
Right.
They have the record is a lot different. So there's that thin line between attempts and numbers for leading players that kind of tilt whether they're going to win or lose.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like, if it's like, I'm not saying not to go out if you're cooking to go
He's supposed to try to score 50 every night.
Every night. That's his job to do. But it's like, okay, maybe take a different approach to that. Because 11 straight times at 40, that's not just a random thing. That means that, you're scoring, you're doing a lot, but it's not generating team wins.
Yes, that's all true. But it also does get back to what you were talking about in the Celtics part of this discussion, which is they have had a crazy number of starting lineups, hit hard by COVID. And obviously, I think it's hard to get in a rhythm with your teammates for the kind of stuff you're talking about. I think a lot of games, Bradley has just been like, I guess it's just me. I'm going out there. There I go. Beal World, DC, an excellent show within the show, brought to you by The Jump. And I hear that the Real World New York that started off the Real World on MTV, they're having those guys come back and live in the house.
Was that like Puck and those guys back in the day?
Teenagers. So before that, the first one, the original one in New York City. Puck was San Francisco. We'll do a little education during the commercial break for the youngsters. Coming up, the Clippers went cold down the stretch against the Bucks on Sunday. Is this another example of why they need an upgrade at the point guard position?